Recorded Books presents The Long War, the inside story of America and Afghanistan since 9/11 by David Loyn, narrated by Stephen Crossley. Introduction. A simple golden crown lay in a glass case on the marble mantelpiece in the inner office of the Afghan president next to a gold medallion. President Ashraf Ghani gestured to these relics of a ruler of Afghanistan's past, one of the successors of Alexander. Ghani saw himself in a line with the ancient kings and borrowed these symbols of power from the National Museum. It was part of his vision of destiny. On his way to file his nomination papers when running for president in 2014, he had sought a blessing from Sibkatullah Mujahidi, the last representative of a clan who were the kingmakers in Afghanistan's past. In 1996, when I first entered the ARG, the presidential palace and seat of Afghan power, I had come in with the Taliban. A Taliban tank festooned with garish plastic decorations from the shops on Wedding Street nearby smashed through the gates. Fighters wandered in and out of the ARG buildings through broken windows and sat in groups on the large lawns eating pomegranates, littering the ground with red-juiced rind. When the Taliban took the capital 2 years after emerging out of the desert near Kandahar, my TV crew were the only foreign journalists reporting from their front line. The ruthless speed of the assault surprised their enemies, and when they broke through the defences of the Sorobi Gorge to the east, thought to be impregnable, the city lay at their feet. These singular fundamentalists were opposed to any depiction of men or animals, and by dawn they had cut the heads of stone statues of dogs on either side of the staircase in the palace and shot out the faces of men in paintings on the wall. On one side of the staircase, the walls of a bathroom were covered in blood, where the Taliban had killed the former president Najibullah and his brother overnight. Their castrated bodies hung from a nearby traffic control point on a roundabout, with cigarettes and dollar bills shoved into their hands and mouths, symbols of depravity. Hundreds of Taliban fighters stood around, watching quietly in the dawn. In 2001, the Taliban were in their turn quickly swept aside in a war from the air, with just a handful of mostly American special operators on the ground standing up local militias. What began as an act of righteous revenge for harbouring the 9/11 planners turned into America's longest war. 20 years on, more than $1 trillion spent and many lives lost, this book asks why it was so hard. At the peak, there were 150,000 troops from more than 50 nations under the umbrella of NATO. Those who commanded this first out-of-area campaign for an alliance originally conceived to keep the peace in Europe had a unique task, because of the nature of the conflict and the challenges of alliance warfare. Keeping the coalition together when the predicted peacekeeping and reconstruction mission turned out to be something very different called on unusual skill. The lessons in leadership they learned have an importance beyond the military. Commanding in Afghanistan raised questions about the ideal division between politicians and the military envisaged by Samuel Huntington in The Soldier and State, where politicians decide policy and the military execute it as independently as possible. The demands of the job made this difficult, wrote General Stanley A. McChrystal. The process of formulating, negotiating, articulating, and then prosecuting even a largely military campaign involved politics at multiple levels that were impossible to ignore. They had to deal with a fractious and unpredictable host, an ill-equipped coalition, nervous of the worsening conflict, and in Pakistan, a neighbour who proved a duplicitous and dangerous ally. And they were making up a new way of fighting counterinsurgency warfare in the glare of the media. McChrystal and his predecessor as commander, General David McKiernan, would be replaced by President Obama, the first field commanders to be fired since MacArthur in Korea in 1951. Under Ghani, the traffic control point where Najibullah's body had been displayed was no longer needed. No
Sample complete. Ready to continue?